Hey, welcome back to the channel. And guys, I hope you're having a fantastic weekend. Many of you who watch the channel know that the channel mostly deals with cryptocurrency, passive income streams, and various things like that. But ever so often, we engage in some of my hobbies, which relate to movies, film, entertainment. And so we're going to review the latest trailer of American Gods. This is the second trailer. If you're not familiar with American Gods is a production based on a book written by Neil Gaiman that pretty much goes into his experience as an immigrant from England to the United States. And as he searches for these folklore into the United States and mythologies that many other cultures have, but America being a new nation, his book is about creating this kind of new area of mythologies about the Americas. And so American Gods, just a great production, excellent book so far. I'm almost done with it after season one. I thought I would be finished by now, but I'm a little bit thankful I didn't finish because I get to be surprised still with some aspects of both the book and the television show. And so going to be very interesting. March the 19th, I believe, is the release date. And so what we're going to do, we're going to look at the latest trailer and I'm going to try to give some insight into the trailer and see what direction it's going in. A lot of people were disappointed after Brian Fuller left production. Many think that it might not be as good as season one. However, after looking at some of the trailers up to now for season two, the acting still looks like it's going to be phenomenal. And so I'm still hopeful we're going to get a great a production. So let's look at some of the this trailer, and I'm going to stop and kind of do a shot by shot and kind of try to figure out where we're at with this trailer.
When people first came to America, they brought us with them. We are the ancient one.
So we get right off, we get Mr. Wednesday, Mr. Nancy, and there's this shot as we got to see of someone who was basically sailing to the Americas. And so with that shot, let me take it back a little bit here. See if we can see that. Okay, there we go. This reminds me of the Ellis Island, right? When a lot of people were selling to the Americas and the first thing they would see is the Statue of Liberty. You know, as this is an immigrant story. As I understand in the books, there, and this person here, I believe it's a person of African descent. There is supposedly these this group of African people that come through the story out of Louisiana, and I haven't got that far in the books yet, so I'm not very familiar. I've been hearing that around the internet. And so maybe if you guys know a little bit more about that, you can leave comments in the comment section.
America, they brought us with them. We are the ancient ones.
So that's Mr. Nancy, and this looks like that's Bilquis. Bilquis, Mr. Wednesday, and Mr. Nancy we get to see. And it looks like Mr. Wednesday was standing in the house on the rock, right? And the house on the rock, the background, it looks like that. Either it's the house on the rock or it may be Odin's Hall. However, he's in Mr. Nancy form, or I'm sorry, Mr. Wednesday form in this shot. So looks like when he goes to Odin's Hall, in the last trailer, he seemed to be more of his god deity form. And so, you know, so it might be that he's at the House of the Rock. And of course, the House of the Rock being a real exhibit, a type of attraction that is, or landmark that's in Wisconsin. And it has these strange exhibits like I think the world's biggest carousel. And so that's the meeting place of this battle that's going to ensue between these new gods, these new American gods, if you will, and the old gods.
We are the ancient ones. And they build churches, cathedrals, or they erect a stone.
So in those shots, we got we got Mr. Nancy again, and we had got Matt Sweeney, and he's in this field of lilies. So I'm not exactly sure. This happens in the book as well, as I understand, and I'm not exactly sure, what's the significance of these lilies yet. We do get a shot of Laura Moon as well landing these lilies or these strange blue flowers. I'm not even sure if they're lilies. Probably not. There's some, I don't know if they're daffodils or what they are, but there's some significance to it. I haven't reached that far in the book, but I do know there is some important about that. But of course, Matt Sweeney, the leprechaun, he's on Mr. Wednesday's side, and they're all headed to the house on the rock.
Churches, cathedrals, or they erect a stone circle.
Dear God, I hope you got the letter and I pray.
Again, Matt Sweeney, looks like that's him, headed with Mr. Wednesday, headed to the house on the rock, getting ready for this battle between the new gods and the old gods. And you see the ravens of Odin, right, Mr. Wednesday, and these are his all-seeing ravens that are able to relay information back to him and give him information. They're kind of flying out ahead. They can see everything that's going on.
Can make it better down here.
Gradually they abandoned us. Old, forgotten God.
I want to go back here because, again, guys, I haven't got this far along in the books. Hold on, let me go back a little bit. There was something I want to point out here right there. Now, I believe I did come across this character in the books, but this is supposed to be the Indian or the Hindu deity Kali. And she seems to be dressed in it almost looks like she's in a maid's outfit or something like that. And she's working in this motel, the Motel Americas. Motel America was the same motel, I believe, back in season 1, Mr. Wednesday was staying at when he was recruiting Shadow Moon. Yes, the Hindu goddess Kali. So she's apparently, what generally happens with these gods or these deities after they're forgotten and they lose their powers, interesting enough, they start to take on just regular lives and jobs, right? And so it's kind of interesting to watch, but they're all just doing regular jobs, right? Like working at a motel or, working in a store someplace, working as a cab driver, because they feed on basically the worship of human beings. And once human beings forget them, it's just like death to them. It's almost like a form of nourishment or food. So if they don't get that, they're no longer able to sustain themselves, and they drop down to these shadows of what they were as these deities.
Old, forgotten gods.
And that was Laura Moon. Laura Moon looks like she's laying in the same field as Matt Sweeney we just saw him in. See if I can bring that back up. I didn't want to. There we go. Okay.
Now they're on.
And again, there was some significance to that field that Laura Moon's laying in, as I'm understanding around the internet, and different information is coming my way. But of course, that's Mr. Rural. Mr. Rural's down in his bunker. There were some other trailers released earlier where we saw him and Technical Boy heading to the bunker. And they ran over this guy playing golf on the way over there. It was crazy. And so they enter into this secret bunker. And it kind of has a 1950s feel, right? This is the era of when the CIA was established, right? The early 60s, late 1950s. And Mr. Rural, this is his area of coordination to get ready for the ensuing war between the old gods and the new gods.
New gods growing in America.
I can't believe
Okay, that was a shot of Technical Boy, and then we jumped here to this is New Media, and it kind of makes sense. We remember Julian Anderson, who played Media from season 1. She's not in season 2, but she kind of played like this more classic Media, right? Depiction of Media, and that was kind of like when she played like Lucille Ball. She played David Bowie. She played looks like Scarlett O'Hara, and just this old classic Media era. But now you see this jump to looks like they're in Tokyo, Japan, or something like that, where there was a great deal of technology and media and influence, and she's in this form of some type of hologram. So I think the move was kind of good, actually, because even though Julian Anderson's character as Media did an excellent job, where I think it kind of started to get it wasn't really connecting, I think, to viewers of this day and age, because none of us in the media really watch Lucille Ball or look at, and so now this is kind of an updated Media or new Media that I think is going to correspond more so with the media of the day and what's happening at the time. I have no idea who that guy was who's looking. I don't know if he's a god or something like that. More than likely, he's some type of god or some type of helper of a god, or he is not many characters at this stage, I think, in the books that are regular people, with the exception of Shadow Moon, if you want to consider him a normal person. But this is a shot of Mr. Windsor Odin. He's kissing one of his spears. This is one of the weapons. Looks like he's going to take in the battle, and it seems to be two of these spears.
To destroy us. War's a coming, Shadow. I have a big role for you.
So that's Shadow Moon. It looks like Shadow Moon is going to fight in this war. But I think it's pretty clear at this point that it's something very special about Shadow. And of course, book readers already know it. I'm trying to stay along with the TV watchers here, but he tosses Shadow this spear. And it's, from what we know about Shadow, he hasn't really exhibited a lot of special abilities, with the exception of, and maybe many of you remember this in season 1, where Shadow Moon, there's this scene where Mr. Wednesday's telling them to think about snow, and I think it begins to snow or something like that. And so it's not ever really revealed that he has some special ability, but I think we can pretty much tell that from Mr. Wednesday has to see something in Shadow. It hasn't been revealed who he is yet, if he's a god or not, but he's tossed one of these mythical spears from Odin. And obviously, he has some big role to play in this story and this war that's coming.
Time to ride.
So you see this carousel spinning, and it looks like it's going to transport them to someplace. Now, this carousel is a real carousel, as far as I know, at the House of the Rock in Wisconsin, this attraction that I was speaking about earlier, that has all these different exhibits in it. And we get a shot of Bilquis, Mr. Nancy, and Mr. Wednesday. So I'm assuming that they're all going together to be transported someplace. Obviously, this carousel has some mythical powers to it. This was an interesting shot. That was looks like a kind of a reincarnated version of both Laura Moon and Shadow Moon. And from what we got from Laura and I was trying to get her on there. Okay, there it is. Let me see if I can stop it right there. There she is. What we got from Laura Moon and her from season 1, there was this story about Laura Moon, or perhaps an ancestor of hers by the name of, I think it was Essie McGowan, and Elsie. This is how she was introduced to Matt Sweeney, the leprechaun, and they had this story, and it was a very interesting story that took up the entire episode. But I'm not sure if this is her story, or if this is just a totally different character. Maybe it could be versions of her, reincarnated versions of her going through centuries, or because the Elsie McGuire story looks like it took place in the 1700s, and this looks like it's or 1700s. This looks like it's happening in about the 1800s, right? Or I could be wrong. I could be wrong there. It could. These both could be happening in the 1800s. It's possible they could be the same characters, but I don't recall Shadow Moon being in any of those stories, or even them even hinting at it. So I'm not sure if this is the same story, but apparently here she has some interaction with Shadow Moon back in this period.
Where am I? Did that happen? There's something special going on here, and I feel.
So again, we see this teleportation, or this transportation. We see it looks like Bill Quest, Matt Sweeney, and Laura being teleported, and Shadow Moon on this next to this ocean or river, and it looks like he's in some type of netherworld. And the only thing that's reminiscent of is when we got to see Anubis, the god Anubis from or what they call Mr. Jackal from season 1, who is the god Anubis, and him and Laura Moon are in this realm that's like this afterlife realm, and he's speaking with her there, and so she's able to transport there some way. But that scene looks exactly like that. So this looks like it's some type of netherworld or something like this, or maybe the realm of the gods where they go.
Part of it.
He is dangerous. I need you to believe that.
That was interesting. That was a bullet, and I believe it's a Latin phrase on it, and I believe it translates to something like, I know Deus is God, and mortem, which usually means death. So it looks like maybe death of the gods. And so what's interesting about that bullet was that it kind of reminds you a little bit of the god Vulcan, doesn't it? From the last season, how he was making those bullets, right? Those bullets were God-killing bullets, because remember, they killed the Mexican Jesus with them. So I'm assuming, or I'm wondering, is that Vulcan manufacturing those bullets? And Vulcan is dead at this stage. So I'm thinking that if that has anything to do with Vulcan, which it seems to have Vulcan written all over it, I'm thinking that this is a flashback of Vulcan, back maybe in a time when him and Mr. Wednesday were working together.
There's always a cost with him. Just haven't paid it yet. The war begins. I'm going to take.
So those were some interesting shots as well. That showed, it looks like, let me go past that.
I need you to believe that.
There's always a cost with him. Just haven't paid.
And that was Matt Sweeney. And Matt Sweeney, as we recall from the last season, he said that he was once a king, and it looks like he's in some battle. And how he goes from being, looks like a mortal king, to this leprechaun that's immortal. He always talks about the relationship and the deals he makes with Mr. Wednesday. So whatever happens in that particular period, I believe it has a lot to that battle may have a lot to do with his relationship with Mr. Wednesday, his deal he made with Mr. Wednesday, and why has to do Mr. Wednesday's bidding. It could have been a favor to win that battle given to him or granted to him by Mr. Wednesday. And that was Mr. Worrell down in his 1950s bunker. There was a fight going on between, as we got to see in that flashback, there was a fight going on between, I guess it was two teenagers or something, people. I don't know if they have any significance into what's going on with the battle in the House of the Rock, or if they were just, a flashback of maybe the condition of the world. I have no idea. But this shot is very interesting because it it basically gives away who this deity is. Many of us thought prior to this trailer that it was a Greek god because of the way that the armor looks, right? It looks very Greek. Um, and this isn't generally how Norse armor looks, right? But the giveaway is he's holding a hammer in his hand, the hammer of Thor. And of course, Mr. Wednesday, being the Norse god Odin, will have this great relationship with Thor. Now, this seems to be a stage presentation. And because it's a stage presentation, what we have noticed with these deities is as they lose power throughout history and through the courses of their lives or existence, they take on these all types of jobs, all types of occupations. And so this stage presentation is why he's wearing this armor. So it has nothing to do with it doesn't need to have anything to do with Scandinavia or Norse mythology. So he's just doing a job. He's doing a stage presentation, And these two women on him, they could be deities as well, or they could be the Valkyries from Norse mythology.
Begins. I'm going to take him out.
So we saw this weird look of Technical Boy where he has this kind of long hair with the ponytail. And I don't know, that might be going back to like the 1990s or the 1980s. And so some are make the assumption that maybe what we're getting with Technical Boy is we're getting his origin stories. And I'm not familiar with any of his origin stories in the books. I don't recall that, but looks like that's what might be happening here. And it kind of would make sense he would have that look, because if you kind of go back to the start of, especially a lot of modern day technology like personal computers and various things like that, you're looking around mid 80s, the 90s. And this could be when Technical Boy was born or his powers start to merge. Also, what we get in a lot of the shots from trailers leading up to this, with his appearance that way, he's a lot more friendlier. He seems to be in awe of the world, which is in contrast to Technical Boy in modern times, a great deal different. In modern times, Technical Boy is a real jerk, as we got to see. He's very mean, he's evil. And the Technical Boy that looks like part of his origin story, you could tell he was in awe of maybe his abilities in the world at that time and the things he could do, but he seemed to be a very different character.
Oh, you take them all out.
I'm not sure who that is, but this is a shot of Mr. Wednesday, and he looks like he's performing in the exact same stage presentation, or maybe at the same theater as Thor was. And so again, they do all these very weird performance jobs because I guess these guys don't have any skills. And so they're taking whatever jobs they can. And we got to see that in season 1 with them doing just these regular jobs that you wouldn't expect any of them would be doing. And we also got to see what appeared to be Shadow Moon. Looks like he's either captured by Mr. World or Technical Boy. And they're trying to get information out of him. I don't know if they're trying to figure out who he is or just trying to figure out what Mr. Wednesday plans are. But he seems to be captured.
This is America. Greatest story ever told.
There's Mr. Wednesday again in this weird stage performance. Before that, we got a shot of the Nazis. And I'm assuming, and those look like SS officers. So I'm assuming it was in Nazi Germany at the time. And for some reason, and I'm just guessing here, I'm just going out on a limb, that their influence and story might be related to Vulcan, who we don't have any evidence will appear in season 2. But it's just so interesting that if we go back to Vulcan in season 1, where he's manufacturing the bullets in this town, the whole town seemed to be dressed like Nazis. If you all recall that, they seem to have those same Nazi characteristics. And I'll go out on a limb and say Vulcan is had a lot to do with the influence of the Nazis. And that's perhaps why they're showing him. I believe it could be a flashback story, or perhaps him and Mr. Wednesday when they were friends and allies working together. That was Chernobog. You guys remember Chernobog? We haven't seen a lot of him recently.
This is America.
That's Technical Boy, the SS. There he is. I keep missing him. Yeah, that looks like him right there. Chernobog. I can't get the Chernobog. I just want that.
This is America.
Freeze.
Greatest story ever told.
There he is. That's a shot I want to get a Chernobog. And you can see he's kind of, we've never seen Chernobog look like this before. He appears to be in his godlike form, looking pretty scary there. We've seen a similar look to Mr. Wednesday where they have this glowing energy and aura around them, like pure energy. And this seems to be their true form. And so that's Chernobog. Of course, he's the guy with the big, long, just like a sledgehammer. And he's obviously on Mr. Wednesday's side, going to battle on Mr. Wednesday's side. Chernobog, meaning Black God. He is a what you would call a Slavic god. And this is Mad Sweeney, looks like, and he's leaping in the air, and apparently he's fighting some type of giant. This kind of makes me think that this battle is very significant again in how he becomes a leprechaun. And because this giant looks like he's pretty hard to beat. And it kind of makes me think that he's going to need the help of Mr. Wednesday. Now, interesting enough, if that's the case and Mad Sweeney calls upon the power of Odin or some god to slay this beast to protect this people, or this giant to protect this people, and to be maybe granted powers in order to do it, it's very reminiscent of the God of War story. If many of you are familiar with the God of War story from the video games, which is very popular, where he calls upon the powers of the gods of Ares, the God of War, to give him the ability to defeat his enemies. If this is in accordance with the books American Gods, then I would think that that the God of War story kind of borrowed from American Gods with this idea. But I just thought that was interesting.
Are we ready? I am.
And now, of course, that was Odin's all-seeing eye. That one eye that's a different color, and he's able to see all with this eye. And so that's pretty much it, guys. I wanted to review that trailer. I'm very excited about American Gods coming out March the 10th on Sunday at 8 p.m. on the Starz Network. The production value of American Gods is on the level of Game of Thrones. Here's the good thing, but it's on the Starz Network. Here's the good thing about American Gods. American Gods, as I understand it, looking at Game of Thrones, because I'm pretty sure a lot of people who watch American Gods watch Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones, this will be its final season, and that will be it. And they'll do a prequel series at some point in the future, and hopefully it'll be good. But the good news about American Gods, for you American Gods watchers or the people who are interested in watching American Gods, is that, as I understand it, this is season 2, but Neil Gaiman, as I understand it, he has enough material to go for 5 seasons. So we could potentially get 5 seasons of American Gods. That's 4 more seasons. And that can help us get over losing Game of Thrones, as I don't know if this prequel series is going to be anything like a lot of times, unfortunately, when we have a lot of sequels or prequel series, they don't do as well as the original. And I hope that's not the case for Game of Thrones. But American Gods, we can probably be in good shape to get about 5 seasons for them. But guys, that's all I want to talk about today. in this episode. If you like content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and until next time, take care.